Shang Tsung, Shang Tao, whatever y'all want to call them. All right, Shang Tung, Shang Sao, whatever. So I'm trying to figure out exactly what's happening over here in Oakland. And the reason that I'm trying to figure out what's happening is because I seen y'all, what y'all sent me. And y'all sent me so many different stories from so many different sources about what's happening over in Oakland. Now, y'all said, yo, she got raided or her house got raided and stuff. So I started trying to do a little bit of digging before I got into the show. And I'm going to give y'all the surface level stuff. And then I'm going to also share with y'all some of the things that I found here. All right. So make sure y'all hit a like for the algorithm, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your notifications. And let's have an uncomfortable conversation.
News we're following for you this afternoon. Multiple locations raided by the FBI in Oakland. That includes the home of Oakland Mayor Shang Tao. Mayor was due to appear at an event this morning at 10, but she was a no-show. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Vicki Liviakis.
And I'm Grant Lotus. The FBI is not releasing any specifics about what these raids are about. Here's a map showing the locations raided this morning. That includes the home of Oakland's mayor, who has a place on Maiden Way, as well as properties on Embarcadero Way, Viewcrest Court, and Skyline Boulevard.
Our correspondent Dan Kerman, he's been following this story all day long, joining us now live from the property that the mayor owns with the latest details. Wow, Dan, what are you finding out?
Well, things have gone from bad to worse for the mayor, first facing just a recall. Now law enforcement sources are telling us that this all has to do with campaign finance violations. Again, no confirmation on that, but that's what law enforcement sources are telling us. This raid here at the mayor's home started. We'll show you some video just about 6 o'clock this morning. Neighbors say a knock on the door. They identify a person who they say is the mayor's boyfriend who let federal agents in. And
Wait a minute, the mayor got a boyfriend? Is that the boyfriend right there?
It's not just the FBI, it was also the IRS. In addition to the IRS, it was the U.S. Postal Service, and they were here packaging up various items throughout the morning. Now, as you mentioned, this was not the only location. They were also on Embarcadero Way at one of the homes of Cal Waste Solutions. This is an operation that's been providing recycling services for the city of Oakland since 1992.
And we're going to deep dive into that. But I always try to figure out, where did these people come from in the first place? You see what I'm saying? So for me, it kind of reminds me of, well, I'm not going to get into that part. But I always wonder why people that are associated with successful businesses, because obviously, owning a home on the West Coast is an accomplishment in itself. Being a part of 4 different properties, you start to be like, and I'm always trying to figure out, well, why are these people even running for these positions in the first place if they were already successful prior to getting in the office? Because whatever that salary is, it's not worth the visibility that comes along with it and the criticism. And it almost seems like, why would you put a target on your back in the first place? you know and so I think that you have to be a unique individual that understand things from a business perspective and also really want to help the community in order to be a public servant, unless and this is not saying that this is what she did, but this is absolutely something that we got to take into consideration. Unless having that level of power also enables you to be able to get more bags for, or have certain levels of power or inside information inside, contractors and all of that stuff, unless it comes with something that benefits you on the back end in some way, shape, or form. Like even Donald Trump, right? I think about Donald Trump and I say to myself, why why was he so gung-ho? And I think I know the reason. My theory, because he was doing incredibly well, he was successful, he had no scrutiny, nobody tripped off of him. They actually celebrated him within the black community. They celebrated Donald Trump within the black community. Now he's basically being sued by everybody and they trying to remove him and he's a political target. I believe that he's a political target. And so it comes, that type of position, especially when you already successful, is a no-win game. When people say to me, Anton, you should run for this, man, get out of here. I don't want that. I ain't interested. I ain't interested at all. Becoming a political figure comes with a level of scrutiny that nobody should want if they are already incredibly successful. Even if you're not successful and you are Tiffany Henyard and you don't know what you're doing, you should probably not do that job. That's probably the worst possible job that anybody could take unless it somehow, some way benefits you on the back end, because people will turn and flip on you in 5 seconds. But let me continue to play the video.
Well, they were there too, and they were also collecting items from that location. That business is owned by the Duong family, and they were also at 2 residences belonging to 2 family members, also conducting property searches in those areas. So at this point, a lot of questions, a lot more questions still need to be answered at this point. Now, we are not expecting any more information out of the FBI. Often as these things go, what we find is that the FBI does their searches, and then we don't hear about it for months and months and months as they sift through all of the evidence that is gathered, and then they see if they are able to make the case that led to these search warrants in the first place. Again, lots of questions. We don't have many answers. We did speak to the folks at Cal Waste Solutions. They say they are absolutely cooperating fully with federal authorities, and they believe that once this is all said and done, they will determine that that organization has not done anything unlawful. But again,
who gives the tip to the news to be there when the federal agents and the post office and the IRS decides to raid these people's houses? Just want to know, because it's always a show.
Time will tell. Again, the mayor has not been spotted at this location at all today. Again, her boyfriend that neighbors identify has been seen at this location. But again, at this point, no sight of Oakland Mayor Sheng Tao. Vicki, Grant?
So a lot of people said Donald Trump loves this country. I could rock with that. I agree with you. I think that a lot of us absolutely loves this country, but at what cost? My theory about Trump, before we continue to go into Shang Tsung over here in Oakland, my theory about Trump is, and I always said this from the very, very beginning. I mean, from the earliest videos where I started talking about his presidency prior to 2016, right? My theory had always been that this was a marketing opportunity and that he never truly expected to win, especially considering what the history of politics was in this country, as far as you had to be a career politician to ultimately win the president of the United States of America. You usually come from the ilk of like an Obama, a community organizer. Eventually you grow up to be an AOC. Maybe you're a former waitress turned, advocate for the community, all of that type of stuff. And then you wind up becoming a senator or a Congress member, maybe even a mayor like Gavin Newsom over in San Francisco. You graduate over to becoming a governor, and then eventually you run for president of the United States of America. I mean, even Kwame Kilpatrick, I've had numerous conversations with him, and he told me, he said, listen, they have a bullpen. They have a bullpen, and the bullpen is, they was paying attention to him. They paid attention to Obama, and they hand select, especially over in the Democratic Party, who it is that they think are going to be rock stars or who they think could eventually galvanize the party to continue to be successful. And those are the people that they groom, hold on to, and hopefully, eventually they can continue to ascend and add value into the political party. So him coming into it, my sentiment was he was using this as a marketing opportunity. And this is just my theory, right? He was using it as a marketing opportunity because there was never any real expectation for him to win until he did, until he hit and he resonated with people, so much so because they didn't want an industry insider. They wanted somebody outside of the party. Do I think that he did a phenomenal job as president? Absolutely. Do I think that he expected to become president when he first announced his running for presidency and then subsequently dealt with all of the backlash that came along with it, especially from the people that was his earlier supporters? I don't think that he expected that. And I certainly don't think that he expected to become a target from a political perspective once he became president. But I think that he started resonated with people and he just embraced it and he went along with it. You will never, ever convince me that when he first announced his presidency that he expected to win. You will never, ever convince me of that. I do believe that he loves the country. I do believe that he did a great job, but you will never convince me that from the very beginning that this was not a marketing opportunity in order for him to continue to get more visibility for his companies. But let me continue to play this.
Dan, you've got the FBI, IRS, plus the U.S. Postal Service. What does that tell you about the seriousness of this?
Well, oftentimes in these raids, it's it's not just one federal agency, but various federal agencies, not always the IRS, not always the U.S. Postal Service. Sometimes it's other federal agencies, but obviously, as law enforcement sources have said, this has to do with campaign finance violations. At least that is what has been suggested. So obviously the IRS is here looking at tax documents. We would assume U.S. Postal Service looking at, I would assume, mail that has gone back and forth. And federal agents looking through everything else. But again, very serious. These search warrants that the federal government gets, you need a lot for a judge to issue a search warrant, especially on the home of a mayor of a big city. And that's what we've seen today. So we'll just have to see where the chips fall once some more information comes out.
Dan, you alluded to this, but is there a decent chance that this issue with the feds is hanging over Mayor Sheng Tao while voters go to the polls in November to decide whether she should be recalled?
Very possibly. I mean, oftentimes when you have search warrants that are under seal, and then we don't hear anything about the case, not just for weeks, but for months. Because at this point, what happens is federal authorities have got to go through all of that material that they've collected, lay it out, see if they can prove a case one way or another, and then interview other witnesses. This might lead them to other areas. So this could be a very long, drawn-out process that could take months, possibly even years, to determine what has been going on. But again, no indication that we're going to get any information anytime soon, because the gathering of this evidence is really the beginning, or at least in the beginning of that process.
So, I started doing some digging, and I started trying to understand. And so the first thing that I did when I did my little bit of digging was I wanted to see what her nationality was. And then I cross-referenced that with other raids that was going on the same day, because they said that they raided 4 different locations. So while everybody else was so concerned with the fact that the mayor was getting raided, I was trying to figure out, well, what was the other 3 locations that got raided in addition to her house, and how does that in some way, shape, or form is associated with her? Because it can't be as simple as campaign finance records or anything like that, because all of it is theory, right? And so in order for us to develop a great theory or a good hypothesis meaning that we making an assumption or the best possible guess as to what's happening, I had to go and do a little bit of cross-referencing, right? And so what I came up with is the FBI has also raided the Duong family. Now, the Duong family came from Vietnam, which is very obviously the nationality of Shang Tung or Shang Tsung or Shang Tao or whatever her name is. And they were raided at the same time. Who are these people? Just so happen to be uh, a major conglomerate that came from Vietnam that ultimately became a huge recycling family and conglomerate over on the West Coast and over in Oakland also, that was endeared to the community, right? Let me play this video for y'all so that y'all can see what's happening over in the East Bay.
But we also saw IRS criminal investigation special agents going into this office on Embarcadero. Now, as we mentioned, the Duong family, they are the family that owns and operates Cal Waste Solutions. They have built a legacy here in the Bay Area and in Vietnam, where they fled from.
FBI agents and the IRS raided California Waste Solutions office on Embarcadero in Oakland. The recycling company's office is located on the 3rd floor, and the Vietnamese American Business Association, or VABA, is just below it. Several people confirm VABA was also raided by federal agents today.
Very surprising, because all these companies are doing good for the community.
Isn't it beautiful? Isn't it awesome how you can start putting the blocks and a puzzle together, and we don't have to necessarily wait until the national media spins a narrative on this before we can start addressing this and start to see exactly how things play out at the top of the top, and why power, not just money, not just resources, but power is the most important thing that you can go for when you start to get a bag.
trying to have recycling going on and clean up the mess that we have.
Cal Waste Solutions is owned and operated by the Duong family, whose journey to the Bay Area was detailed in an earlier CBS News Bay Area story.
Saigon is we call home, but our heart is here.
The Duong
should have never even did a news story in the first place.
Family escaped Vietnam on a boat when North Vietnamese soldiers seized their properties in 1975. After arriving to the Bay Area, the family settled in the Tenderloin. The family would pick up cardboard from the streets to make money until they opened the first recycling warehouse in West Oakland. California Waste Solutions is now worth hundreds of millions of dollars.
So let me get this straight. Vietnamese soldiers seized their property over in Vietnam. They all come over here on the boat. They fled the scene, come over here on the boat in the 70s, and they start their business by picking up trash on the ground that eventually led to them opening up their first location of a recycling company because that was the only way that they can make money, which has now grown into a hundreds of millions, maybe even billion-dollar company. And now they're starting to take over and have been playing a large role in what's been happening with regard to politics over in the East Bay area. I just want to make sure that I'm getting all of this, right? I just want to make sure that it's all coming together. Let's continue.
Employs about 300 people and invests back into Vietnam after opening a solid waste and recycling company called Vietnam Waste Solutions. Our story in 2015 featured Andy Duong, whose home on Viewcrest Court was raided earlier this morning. Over the years, Andy Duong has become a regular face in local, state, and national politics. He helped organize a trip to Vietnam last year that included local delegates, including Oakland Mayor Sheng Thao.
Let's continue to play it.
Andy Duong's Instagram also shows him standing side by side with some of the country's most powerful politicians, including President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris.
Somehow, some way, something tells me that this is never going to even come close to a President Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. But let's continue.
During today's raid at Cal Waste Solutions' Oakland office, federal agents hauled out 2 carts stacked with boxes with Andy Duong's name written on labels. Carl Chan is the president of the Oakland Chinatown Chamber of Commerce.
Basically, the Duong family has been involved with City of Oakland with the contract, called California Waste Solutions for many years. And so this time it's involved with the mayor, and I guess, potentially many other folks.
Federal investigators now probing one part of a family's rags to riches story. At least one member of a politically connected family now under the microscope.
Now, I also got in touch with Teresa Huang. She is an executive with VABA and also works for Cal Waste Solutions. She tells me, quote, "We're confident that the officials will let us and the public know that there is nothing unlawful or anything wrong. The officials know more than anybody right now what the investigation is about." Huang.
So, long story short, this goes much, much deeper than at the surface of, oh my God, it's just campaign violations or whatever like that y'all been hearing. It goes much deeper. So I'm going to be paying attention. In the background, I'll be doing a lot of digging. Hopefully I can put together some sources and as far as put together different sources that I can use as reference material to continue to have this conversation with y'all, because it's about power. It's absolutely about power. People ask me a lot of times, Anton, why are you so interested in politics? Why is politics such a big thing for you, especially on the Millionaire Morning Show? Why not just talk about real estate, or why not just talk about stocks or whatever like that? Because the money is in the politics. The money is in the politics. The power moves come from associating yourself and then ultimately paying your dues with the people that make the decisions from a legislative perspective, which is one of the reasons why it's so important, or one of the reasons why all of your Congress members are literally rich. They all millionaires. All of the public servants of our country eventually become millionaires. No, they can't put together a sentence. Oh man, they don't know what the heck is going on. They all wind up becoming millionaires by the time that they're even Bernie Sanders, even feel the burn. Even feel the burn. I don't even think Bernie Sanders has ever released a book in his life. Even Bernie Sanders is a millionaire. Lifetime politicians get you great health care, uh, phenomenal 401k, and ultimately you can become a millionaire. Listen, we shouldn't even be watching Warren Buffett. Forget Warren Buffett. Go and follow Nancy Pelosi if you want to understand how to move from a stock perspective.